Hello, my friends. Andrew Kornfeld here, reporting to you from my office in San Diego, California. Got my sparkling water here. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you about my journey with Crohn's disease and how it has led to the position that I and my team are in today, where we are poised to change healthcare forever. I would highly encourage you to watch the whole thing, and I'm sure those of you who do watch the whole thing, you will get a lot out of this, because this journey right here and what I've been through and what I've watched hundreds of other people go through with inflammatory bowel disease and other conditions, I think is the foundation to changing healthcare forever and addressing the worldwide health crisis, the rise of chronic disease that we are seeing. I had an amazing childhood. I grew up in a place called Marin County, California, on this beautiful mountain called Mount Tamalpais. It actually means sleeping lady because when you look at it, it looks like a woman who is sleeping. And I grew up around nature. I grew up with some incredible parents, but there was some chaos in my household as well. And, we all go through things. And I think that was a contributor to me ultimately developing Crohn's disease, because as we have started to discover, early childhood experiences, stress in our life, it changes stress hormones, it changes how our immune system is regulated, and it can result in autoimmune conditions. It can result in other inflammatory conditions. It can result in lifestyle metabolic conditions that we see. And this is part of it. Obviously another contributing factor, which we're going to go into, is just the rise of all of these chemicals that are in our environment and in our food that frankly are banned in other countries and that human beings have never been exposed to. And there's a myriad of scientific data to suggest that the chronic health conditions we are experiencing have a lot to do with how we're living our life. So as I grew up, my parents took me to this interesting place on the Big Sur coast called Esalen. And Esalen was sort of, you could say, maybe from a mainstream perspective, you could call it a hippie commune. From other perspectives, you could call it a life-changing place where very notable people like Alan Watts, Aldous Huxley, even like Richard Feynman, the physicist, spent a lot of time. And I was exposed, I think at a very early age, and I didn't know it, to this idea of human potential. And this idea that human beings are capable of really, really great and amazing things. And, I'm going to pin it right there because there's a lot else that we can talk about with Esalen, how I think it's an incredibly healing, amazing environment, how there's hot springs that are sitting, on the coast. And unfortunately, Esalen now is kind of inaccessible right now and is reserved for people who have pretty high incomes. I think they're getting better, and there's some ways for people to access the property now and be at this incredible place. It's still going, this life-changing, place. But my dad was a physician, and he is a big inspiration to me. My mom's a nurse practitioner. My stepmom is also a nurse. I come from a very medical family, which is both a blessing and a curse. And as I was growing up, my dad served as the sort of camp doctor at Esalen Institute. And so that was one part of my mind that was there. And this was before I was a healthy kid. I had no GI symptoms. I was good. My parents divorced. It was hard. And a few years after that, I developed my first symptom of Crohn's disease, and I didn't know it at the time. I was on a wilderness expedition, and I came back, and I had massive amounts of diarrhea, and it was really surprising to me. I think I had thought that, even as a 16-year-old, I just assumed that it was something like a bug, like Giardia, like I drank bad water or something like that, because it was so out of the ordinary for me. And I think I convinced my doctors at the time to treat me with antibiotics. I was so convinced, even though I was coming back negative. And after I took the antibiotics, everything got worse. The diarrhea never went away. It started to have negative effects on me. I started to lose weight. I started to be extremely fatigued. And I had this moment, before I was diagnosed, I was misdiagnosed with celiac disease. I was misdiagnosed with IBS. That, they didn't know what was going on. And yet I was losing a lot of weight. And I ran my hand through my hair at one point, and I just found this huge clump of hair in my hands. And I basically had what I would consider pretty close to a panic attack at that time. And I thought, I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I thought I was going to die. And it was really, really, really scary. I was fatigued all the time. And, I was still trying to hang out with my friends, and I was still trying to go mountain biking and surfing and all this. And it was actually probably kind of dangerous that I was doing that. Eventually, I developed a complication to my Crohn's disease called an anal fistula. And we're not going to go into detail about what that is, but it's a pretty pesky problem, and I don't have one anymore. It's healed. And the story of how I healed that fistula is wild. It's an absolutely wild story of how I took really medicine into my own hands with my own health team and was able to get rid of a problem, the anal fistula, that my colon rectal surgeon was unable to solve initially. And it's an extraordinary story, and we're going to release a video and a paper and all of that later on. So I was diagnosed after the fistula. I was immediately given a colonoscopy. They obviously tried to fix the fistula right away. It was unsuccessful. And I was immediately put on steroids. The steroids helped me. Obviously, there was, back then and still, even though now there's a plethora and a myriad of evidence to support diet and lifestyle and these different things in Crohn's disease, I was told that diet had no effect on Crohn's disease and that the data was inconclusive. So I continued to eat whatever I wanted. I continued to consume seed oils and gluten and artificial dyes and colors and all of these things that we now know are associated with Crohn's disease. So I was put on a maintenance medication called azathioprine or 6-mercaptopurine. It's actually pretty, it has its place. I think it's helped people. It's not really prescribed per se to young men with Crohn's disease, especially because it's associated with a very aggressive lymphoma that actually has a fatality rate of 100%. So I survived, obviously. I'm not on that medication anymore. And it did get me to what I would call a place of purgatory. I was sort of okay. I didn't gain that much weight back necessarily, but I wasn't running to the bathroom 20 times a day. I wasn't as fatigued. And at that point, I was able to matriculate to the University of California, Santa Cruz. And I think my time in college, the 5 years I spent in college, I double majored, I got a degree in neuroscience and psychology, changed my life significantly. And although I didn't really understand the principles of diet and nutrition, and I didn't understand what I do now, it laid a further framework, just like my time at Esalen. And the reason why I chose to study neuroscience, I remember picking it when I was 18. I was like, this is the most foundational thing. What is more foundational than the human brain, okay, and how we move through the world? And as I was going through my classes, I started to notice that there was this rift between the soft sciences and the hard sciences, and that literally the departments didn't even talk to each other. There was no communication between the psychologists, between the social scientists, and between the neuroscientists, or between the chemists and the physicists. When I would take a psychology class, we'd oftentimes get the desks and we'd put them in a circle, and we'd speak to each other, and we'd talk about our feelings, we'd talk about psychological theories, and there was always this kind of sense that we wanted to be more empirical about it. Psychologists always wanted to be part of the cool kids club of being able to conduct, real science and stuff like that. So that was there. And then literally, I remember I had a section that was in the same room, and then I believe it was a biology class that came in, and then immediately the desks were no longer arranged in a circle. They were arranged in rows. And there was a teacher teaching us all of these biological principles. And I was like, wait, this makes no sense. Why don't we learn biology in a circle here? Why don't there's a biological basis to our feelings, to our behavior, to all of these things. And, again, I was still having symptoms of Crohn's disease during this time. I was having side effects from the azathioprine, but I was well enough to be able to study and understand this. So there was also another organization that was in Santa Cruz, and they are a very famous organization now. They're much bigger. They're called the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And they were just beginning to do initial trials with MDMA, methylene deoxymethamphetamine. It's ecstasy. And they were using this medicine essentially to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was very interested in this, and I had been exposed to the psychedelic community. I was actually lucky enough to be exposed to many of these important figures, including Alexander Shulgin, who was was the second person to ever synthesize MDMA and actually popularized it and never wanted it to become what it did and be used recreationally and all of that. And, we can just quickly fast forward to a few months ago, and sadly, MDMA was recently rejected by the FDA for PTSD, even though the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. And that's something that's too bad that happened, but I think they're going to continue that journey. But I looked at the results of the study, and I actually became exposed to an incredible book, and I have it right here. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. This might even be my original copy right here. And this book came out, I believe, in 2006, and this was around 2008, 2009. A friend of mine, a great contributor named Austin Wilson, still a great friend, recommended it to me. And he said, dude, it's all about neuroplasticity. And that moment changed my life, because all of a sudden it started to give a biological explanation to what I saw at Esalen, these amazing feats that people would go through, that people could do extraordinary things, that people could lose half their brain, that they could go through extremely traumatic experiences and still recover. And so I actually ended up writing my thesis on how I postulated that MDMA activated neuroplasticity in the brain, and that's why people who had gone through significant trauma, who experienced brain damage, that when you go through a very traumatic experience, that parts of the brain, including the hippocampus, the part that converts short-term memory to long-term memory, actually we see atrophy of different neurons and these dendrites changing shapes in maladaptive ways. And I postulated that MDMA actually contributed to neuroplasticity. And later on, maybe 5 to 10 years later, that period, I was proven correct, which is very, very cool. It was a very obvious observation and an obvious explanation. And I think when anyone goes through any change, you don't have to be under the influence of a psychedelic drug or MDMA or anything like that, or even necessarily have some sort of crazy spiritual experience. There is a changing of the brain. And that is what we know now, that your brain is extremely malleable. And I think one thing I didn't fully realize is that the body maybe is not malleable in the exact same way as the brain, but can also profoundly heal. So we started a student society. I had this opportunity to go into research or to go into organizing. And we started a student society called the Brain, Mind, and Consciousness Society. And it really took off on campus. And the whole goal of it was to explore consciousness. It was to explore human behavior. We talked about a lot of things back in 2011 that are very prominent now, such as psychedelics, such as AI. Seriously, we were speaking a lot about AI. We speak about consciousness. We had obviously no idea that here we are in 2024, almost 2025, and we'd have these large language models that are Midjourney and ChatGPT and Claude and all of these tools that we have now that are just absolutely insane in many ways. And we don't really know what the future holds with all of this. And I think that's an important factor that I'm also going to discuss a little bit. So that society became a wild success. And it really gave me like a foundation in being able to organize and to be able to build things. And we had events where, 400 people packed into a 280 person room. And it was wild. It was really, really fun. I made lifelong friendships. But let's fast forward a little bit. After I graduated, I got into a very significant flare. I was still on the azathioprine. I was on the 6-mercaptopurine, and I flared out of control. Nothing was stopping us. Running the bathroom 20 times a day. I was losing weight again. I think I got down to about 105, 110 pounds. I'm 145 now, for example. It's just, it was really, really tough. And, I didn't know what to do. I contacted my gastroenterologist, my team, and they recommended biologics. At the time, maybe I should have been put on a biologic to begin with because it would have been safer than the azathioprine. But that's what it was. I was put on they wanted to put me on biologics. They, at one point, suggested a resection of my terminal ileum because it was so inflamed. I mean, the colonoscopy results looked really, really bad. But there was something different. And that's that at that point, I had exposure to science. I knew how to search PubMed. I knew that there had to be another way. I was exposed to systems thinking. I was exposed to neuroscience. And I went into the scientific literature, and this is in 2014, and I took a deep dive. So this is 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, okay? And what I discovered blew my mind, that there were all of these studies. And by the way, there are like 10 times, maybe 100 times more studies supporting lifestyle, diet, supplements and herbs, these different foundations, obviously exposure to certain chemicals in our environment that might cause inflammatory bowel disease or might worsen inflammatory bowel disease. And I was like, wait a second, this is, why don't I try this? So I changed my diet for the first time radically, really. And I flirted with being gluten-free and all of that. But I think I even went too far, for example. I cut out too many things. And as I was changing my diet, I started to notice that it wasn't just about the foods that I was taking out of my diet. It was about the foods that I was incorporating into my diet. It was about when I was eating, how I was eating. Was I incorporating enough polyphenols and flavonoids and anti-inflammatory foods and fruits and these types of things? Was I getting enough nutrient-dense animal products? And I wasn't able to articulate it like that necessarily, like I do now, because I have such a foundation now for all of this. But that is really, in many ways, changing my diet, changing my mindset. That's what saved my life. Now, I did pursue functional doctors and integrative doctors, and I spent a lot of money doing that. And I think it was really helpful in some ways, but it was kind of like, how many supplements can we put you on? And, in all honesty, I do take a lot of supplements and herbs right now. Probably take, at least a dozen or two at any given time per day. And they're all scientifically targeted at inflammatory bowel disease and at longevity and at helping me be the healthiest person possible. And, as you know, I did eventually attain remission and all of that, but I'll get there in one sec. So I noticed that the supplements and herbs that worked the best and the dietary interventions that worked the best were the ones that had the most scientific evidence behind them. They were the ones that had studies specifically in inflammatory bowel disease. Obviously, there were less randomized controlled trials than there are now, but the more significant the scientific evidence, generally I noticed that, there's some exceptions there. I take some things that aren't perfectly, evidence-based right now, but the more evidence and the more science that was behind a specific supplement or herb or a specific dietary intervention or anything else that I pursued seemed to work the best for my Crohn's disease. And my Crohn's disease started to reverse. This is in 2014. I went from 20 bowel movements a day down to 10 bowel movements a day, down to 5 bowel movements a day. My markers of inflammation, we now use calprotectin as that measure. We didn't really have that back then. We were using CRP, but my CRP was going down. I think my doctors were, reluctantly optimistic about what was happening. And I think they were surprised to learn about the changes that I was making. And, from their perspective, they had just been taught and in practice that diet really didn't matter in this condition. But yet here I was healing, putting on weight, getting more energy, all of this type of stuff. And I was healing. So I actually requested for me to go off the azathioprine, the 6-mercaptopurine, which is pretty, like I said, it's pretty aggressive medication that in higher doses is used in cancer treatment even. And they reluctantly approved it. And since that point, I have been in remission from Crohn's disease since. Now, I just want to say, right now, remission does not mean perfection. It means that for me, what remission means is that by and large, most days I feel incredible. And when my body gives me a signal, I have the tools in order to be able to match any initial flare that I'm having of my disease with an evidence-based, systems-based, you could say holistic, but not in the sense of alternative medicine, but a multi-dimensional protocol. And that's what I do. And frankly, I have not had a flare that's lasted for more, at least symptoms that have lasted for more than 3 or 4 days before I'm able to get it under control again. And, that's what many other people and individuals have also been able to do who I've worked with hundreds. So after that, I decided, hey, I want to give back. I want to do this. I want to do this in the most legitimate way possible. So I had my pre-med classes taken, most of them. I took the MCAT. I think I took it twice. I did pretty well the second time. And ultimately, I was admitted to an incredible medical school in California. And when I got there, this was, a few years later, it was all the way in 2017, 18. I realized that my vision for healthcare that I was forming was going to be extremely inefficient for me to become a physician. And it was heartbreaking because my identity, those of us who are pre-meds, and there's all these videos now of these doctors who are quitting medicine, and that's terrifying. And that, I think, that says a lot about how we train our doctors and how we treat our doctors. And I am one of them. I essentially did quit medicine. Luckily, I didn't quit in residency when I was in $500,000 of debt, which literally some of my friends are in that $500,000 of debt. That's crazy that our health system is putting that level of stress on doctors right now. I left after 3 months, and I was a little bit lost at that time, but this was in 2018. And I got together with a co-founder of mine, incredible individual named Alex Yao. And I told him that I wanted to do something for inflammatory bowel disease. And I said, listen, what if we take IBD patients, those with Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, microscopic colitis, indeterminate colitis, okay? And we help them to become superhuman. We help them to become a better version of themselves, and we teach them biology. We teach them science, because we had experience back at UC Santa Cruz in teaching undergrads all sorts of biological concepts as undergrads too. So we said, what if we teach IBD patients biology? What if we teach them how to work more closely with their mainstream medical team, with their integrative medical team, and to distinguish between what is working for them and what is not? What if we teach them how to decipher and read scientific literature, and then to put this all together in now what we call the Remission Master Plan, or in our more foundational program, we call it the Health Master Plan. And this was sort of a novel idea. The healthcare system, even in how it's named, we have patients and doctors. And the word patient is like we need to patiently wait for the doctor to get back to us. And in healthcare systems all around the world, it doesn't matter where you are. Sometimes people wait months to see their doctors for 15 minutes. Okay. And look, there's no way we are going to solve the healthcare crisis unless we empower patients, we change their brains, okay, and we help them to build their ultimate protocols. And that's what we did. And we launched an incredible company called IBD Coach. This has been such a journey since 2019. We've worked with hundreds of IBD patients. It really is, look, it's like when you build a company, it's like getting an MBA. Like you learn this. You learn from your mistakes. You learn from your successes. We ultimately did quite a bit of revenue with that company. But ultimately, I realized that I wanted to expand it. But we built on what we had done with IBD Coach because people changed their life. We worked with people who had been on medication. Some of the individuals you see behind me right now, this is actually a poster that we presented, a scientific poster that we presented at the Crohn's and Colitis Congress in 2022. And people had been on huge doses of medications with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. They had tried different diets. They tried all of these strategies and nothing was working. And it was like, wait, what do you do in that situation when nothing is working? You target the patient. You start with the human being at the center. You help them to become a more competent version of themselves. And that's exactly what we did. And the results were insane. That's all to say. They were crazy. I don't think that our program worked for everyone because we didn't have the resources for that. As we build Systema, we are going to be able to build incredible physical locations where there's nothing that replaces human to human contact. And as this grows, we are going to do more of that. But there was something special that was going on. People often recovered after over a decade of trying. And I'm not going to go into the specific examples, but there's a lot of testimonials and examples of people that have been through IBD Coach. And last year, I was at an inflection point. I knew that I wanted to expand this approach beyond IBD because oftentimes what we notice is we had a ton of success with people who only had inflammatory bowel disease, but we were so specialized and we learned everything about IBD that we were not as readily able to address comorbid conditions with people's specialists and to understand people who had severe IBS or had other autoimmune conditions or had other gut conditions, whether it was rheumatoid arthritis or, like I said, irritable bowel syndrome or diverticulitis or lifestyle metabolic conditions or even cancer. We weren't equipped to do that. And I had always known that we were going to apply this approach that we had established with IBD Coach to a myriad of other chronic health conditions. And last year, I said, it's time to do that. So we stopped working directly on IBD Coach and we built a company called Systema Health. And it's been very exciting. We've soft launched Systema Health a few months ago. It's been working on it in stealth mode for a while, and we're going to really continue to expand in 2025. But we're now equipped to essentially address a myriad, to take this approach, this patient-centered approach with inflammatory bowel disease and apply it to a myriad of other health conditions. And we named the framework. We call it systems-based health coaching, or SHC. And it is an incredible framework where we're able to look at every aspect of someone's protocol. And honestly, the most important first step in helping people is to just change their mindset about it. We get people often now that I privately coach with, that people who enroll in IBD Coach's successor, which is called Systema IBD, which is even a more advanced program for people with Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, indeterminate colitis, and microscopic colitis. And they're blown away because these people have lost hope in many ways. We work with very sick people at the time, and we help them to actually work more closely with their GI doctors. And we work very collaboratively with the mainstream healthcare system, with the integrative healthcare system. We're trying to we're trying to be friends with everyone. And, I think we've radically succeeded. I'll just say real quick, that the gastroenterologists, the specialists, the doctors who've seen this program, I would say at worst are neutral on what we're doing and at best are ecstatic, because patients are able to present their protocol scientifically to their doctors. We're able to educate them, people who've never even understood biology. And this is all about this new mindset. They understand that they can change, that their brain can change, that their body can change. And actually, instead of looking at disease as this awful, horrible thing, these incurable autoimmune conditions and lifestyle-based conditions, we look at these conditions as a very natural response, to all of the environmental toxins that we are exposed to every single day, the way we are living our life, the foods we are eating, the artificial dyes, red number 40, yellow number 6, different binders and additives ranging from carrageenan to carboxymethylcellulose, or the list goes on. Okay, we could be here all day to go through the unacceptable poisons that are in our food supply right now, and even the microplastics that are on our clothing right now, the PFAs, these forever chemicals that are, all of these things are contributing to inflammatory bowel disease and frankly many other autoimmune conditions. But the first is to change that mindset, like I was saying, and actually to understand that if you are diagnosed with a chronic health condition, if you are diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease, or like I said, rheumatoid arthritis, or irritable bowel syndrome, or psoriasis, the list goes on, you are more sensitive to the environment around you and you have superpowers. That sensor is your superpower, because if you listen to that and you cultivate it, you will be able to build a protocol that will help you live longer and healthier for your entire life. And we want to teach even healthy people who have had the luxury of not being diagnosed with a chronic health condition that mentality. And that's the mentality that has saved my life. I think another mindset principle that we often go through is that biology is complex and that it does need a systems-based approach. And when I say, what is systems thinking? What is this? I'm going to just briefly tell you about what it is. It's that looking that everything is interconnected with one another and that nothing is really done in isolation. And there's not going to be a silver bullet that usually solves a chronic health condition. It's possible that someone takes, an incredible medication that's been developed, like Remicade or Humira or Entyvio or Stelara or Zimposia, all of these incredible medications that we have now, which by the way, were not available when I was at my worst. And it's possible someone takes that medication, they don't change their diet at all, and they get years of relief. But the probability is that medication will stop working, and more than likely the medication just won't work. When you look at efficacy rates, it's like 20 to 30% sometimes, and that's not very good. Okay, and the more medication someone has been on, the probability that medication will actually work in the future goes down by quite a bit. And that's why we believe that a foundational lifestyle protocol is absolutely necessary in order for medications to work, and maybe even possible for these medications, for people to be medication free. I am not on any biologics right now. I take some mesalamine at times. Which is a pretty mild medicine for my IBD. It's not required. I think it's helpful to me. But even in the mesalamine, it's packed with titanium dioxide and carboxymethylcellulose. Literally in the pill that I take that helps my Crohn's disease, there are additives and binders that have been scientifically studied to show that they exacerbate IBD. Just let that sink in for 1 second. Isn't that insane? What is going on with that? Literally, you can easily find data to show that the additives in a generic pill of Lielda, which is mesalamine, contains binders and additives and red number 40, all of these things that make IBD worse. I've done the calculation that at times the benefits outweigh the risks, But this is the insanity that we are facing here. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a neurosurgeon to figure this out. So our fourth mindset principle is that you have to change your environment, okay? And this is part of systems thinking right here, because the environment has a profound impact on us, our psychological environment. Maybe this means that we need to cultivate new safe places. Maybe we're really stressed out from our job. We're working 60 hours a week. We have a maladaptive work environment. Maybe we are living with someone who is toxic to us. Maybe we're in a toxic relationship and that relationship needs to change. Maybe there's actual, toxins that are in our house that we need to change. I think that's overstated a lot of the times. I think everyone thinks there's mold in their house and stuff. And I think that's a little bit overstated, but it is real. Maybe we need to change the climate that we're in. Maybe we're in too cold of a climate or too warm of a climate, or we don't live close enough to nature. Okay. And these are just things that we need to consider changing. And sometimes it's not possible for people to change these things because they're not financially able to do it, or it's just not in the cards right now. But you have to think about your health. And again, are you starting to see how this is what systems-based health coaching is? I'm going to tell you even more about it, but it's taking all of these things, and it's not just about us switching a medication or us taking a new supplement or us doing surgery or something like that. It is literally about changing kind of everything about our lives in order to live healthier. And what we see is profound results. We see in IBD, we see lower calprotectin values. We see, improvements in symptoms. We see better colonoscopies. And, I work with a number of people with other autoimmune conditions, and the results, what I see when we start to change these things, especially for people who haven't had a ton of success with either the mainstream or integrative healthcare systems, is pretty profound. And I just want to remind you all that this takes a lot of patience and resilience. Okay. And this takes time. The body takes time to heal. So in terms of really what we do in systems-based health coaching is for us to educate patients on this. Obviously, we make suggestions, but this is the only health coaching modality, in my opinion, that works extremely collaboratively with the mainstream healthcare system. For example, one of the first things that people do after they change their mindset and they change their environment is they learn about the biology of their healthcare, of their condition. And they start to learn about the treatment options that are available. And all of a sudden, this patient, which is totally related to mindset, becomes an empowered individual, okay? And walks into their GI doctor or their rheumatologist or their psychiatrist, okay? Or their pulmonologist or their cardiologist, okay, or their primary care doctor, or their integrative doctor, the list goes on, and all of a sudden understands what's biologically happening with them. They understand at least the initial treatments of which ones have scientific evidence, both mainstream and complementary treatments. And then they construct in our program this beautiful document called the Health Master Plan or the Remission Master Plan. And they put this protocol that they've constructed in one place. And we have a lot of exciting features. We're using AI to help patients construct this and all of that. And then they present it to their doctors. And the feedback that I get from GI doctors and different specialists is, oh my God, everything is in one place. I don't have to look through 500 pages of medical records just to find one thing, because patients list out their test results. They list out which supplements and herbs they're taking. They list out the scientific evidence behind those specific supplements and herbs. They list out the brands that they're taking so their doctors can actually approve them and actually understand them. Again, it's the feedback I get from my friends and my colleagues is that this is an obvious approach. But no one else is doing it besides us. And please, anyone, copy us. This is the future of healthcare, and this is what we are building right now. We have another incredible feature of the program called the adaptive dietary framework. And again, this is like so obvious. We hear about all of these gurus that are on the internet, some of them spouting good stuff, some of them spouting total BS. Some people say only eat animal products. Some people say only eat plants. Some people say you've got to be paleo. Sometimes people say you got to be on a Mediterranean diet. I mean, the amount of diets out there is crazy, okay? So we have what's called the adaptive dietary framework, where we start with a foundational dietary strategy that's evidence-based for someone's condition. And then we go through 3 phases to help people to modify that diet: a foundational phase, a stability phase, and an exploratory phase. Because guess what? We are human beings and we should be able to eat amazing food sometimes. I don't think that we should be eating fast food or food that is not food, like things that are binders and additives and stabilizers, and the list goes on. But, sometimes those of us with inflammatory bowel disease should be able to go enjoy a really nice piece of pizza or a croissant, or, something else is not always on our diet right there. And that needs to be combined with other lifestyle interventions. Like, for example, when I don't eat a lot of carbs for my diet, but when I do eat carbs, it's really necessary for me to go to the gym, lift weights, for me to go on a bike ride or go surfing, or to do some sort of physical activity for my body to use the food that I am eating. And again, all of this is there and you're starting to get a piece of this, but then we help patients to navigate complex healthcare systems. We help them navigate the mainstream healthcare system. We help them navigate the integrative healthcare system. We help them fight their insurance companies. The amount of healthcare decisions that are made not by doctors, in fact, but by healthcare, by insurance companies in the United States and by world government healthcare systems who are not in the United States is unacceptable. And oftentimes we see over and over again that a medication that has less side effects, that is safer, that is better, is not approved just because it's more expensive. And oftentimes medications that are equally as expensive are just there because that's just the way things go. And this is just like when I asked, for example, when I was being treated, and I asked my gastroenterologist why I was being put on azathioprine. I did when I was 17, I asked. And he said, this is just our process. This is our process. Okay, but like, why me? Why am I given this medication? What are the biological markers? What are my genetic markers? What are my microbiome markers? Why am I given this medication? He says, listen, this is our process. This is how we do things. And that's another idea. People put out the idea of first principle thinking. And this is, and it's just like this, we do things as human beings because previous human beings have done them, not because it has the most logical data to support that decision. And so I think also Systema is based in this idea of systems thinking and first principles thinking and neuroscience. And it sounds fancy and complex, but it's really not that complicated. It's like, how do we make the human being better? And we educate patients on all the procedures, on the medications, the interventions. We help people to understand literally, when I take a one-on-one client or when I work with someone in Systema IBD, we have researched the different supplements and herbs that have evidence, no matter how small or big, and we help to educate them. And by the way, I don't care which brands people pick of supplements and herbs. It's not a big deal to me. I don't currently partner with any supplement or herb companies, and they've all contacted me, by the way, to partner with them. But I feel like that is a conflict of interest right there. And I'm not saying I won't in the future if I find, brands that are really aligned with me, but I haven't done it for the last 5 years. What I say is just find a brand that doesn't contain binders and additives. The amount of supplements and herbs that contain maltodextrin and different additives and binders that are adverse to inflammatory bowel disease and contraindicated, it's a lot. So pick one that's been third-party tested. Pick one that doesn't have extra stabilizers and binders in it, that just destroy your microbiome. That's what I would say. And in addition to that, we look at the whole picture. We help with the environment. Like I said, we help people to sleep the best they've ever slept in their life. I mean, I think biohackers have a lot of good, I think it's overboard, but simple things like to sleep better, to just like look at light in the morning is a great idea. To, wait to consume caffeine, to get enough exercise. I will tell you that oftentimes people in Systema, it's less about sometimes the knowledge because they kind of know what to do, and it's more about being reminded and being in an incredible community. The community we built of IBDers, by the way, and now of healthy individuals and individuals with other chronic conditions, these are the smartest people I know personally. They're the most courageous people I know. This is, one of our advisors, Dr. Ali Arjaman, for example, describes it as the most advanced community of IBD patients on the planet. And that is our goal. I want to be able to take IBD patients and patients with other chronic health conditions who have never taken a biology class in their life. Maybe they don't even speak English, eventually. And we begin to educate them about this process. And actually, it helps their entire life. And they're able to change their life forever. There's so many different things we are doing. Systema has multiple offerings now. You're going to see this as we move on. It's been, I really thank you for sticking around for this long video with me. We just have a little bit more. I mean, we have Systema Core, which is a low-cost monthly program that people can be in now that makes it extremely accessible. We have Systema IBD. If you have inflammatory bowel disease and you're watching this video, if you've made it through, I would highly encourage you to schedule a call with me for Systema IBD. And this is really like what we know the best, obviously, because we've done it for a very long time. We know the ins and outs. My team and I have read like almost every scientific paper you can imagine on inflammatory bowel disease, and there's a lot coming out now, so we have some catch up to do for sure. But we are able to help IBD patients construct their ultimate protocol, and you'd be in the most amazing community ever. And guess what? Every IBD patient and almost every other patient with chronic health conditions, I'd say above 90%, use the mainstream healthcare system and use evidence-based medicine, and they do some sort of lifestyle intervention, some sort of naturopathic intervention, and this program does not discriminate between the two. We do it all. And at the end of the day, if someone comes into the program and they don't want to be on medications, that's our goal too. If someone comes in the program, it's like, hey, I'm really happy on my medication, I'm doing really well, that's awesome. We support that. We want to be able to give the foundational lifestyle interventions that are going to help people to actually reduce the side effect profile of those medications. We have a nonprofit part of our program called Systema Fund, which helps IBD patients and other people with chronic health conditions access our services. We have Systema One-on-One, where if you don't have IBD and you want to work with me one-on-one, I will work with you one-on-one with your chronic health condition, and we will apply systems-based health coaching. And I've also launched now a systems-based health coach training program, the initial apprenticeship, and it's really exciting. I have worked with people who are desiring to learn this framework, and you can work with me right now if you want to learn the ins and outs. You want to watch hundreds of hours of coaching that I have done with individuals of how I work with, like I said, the mainstream healthcare system, the integrative healthcare systems, and how we apply this systems-based framework that we have, systems-based health coaching, and how it's, again, based in this idea of neuroscience and neuroplasticity. It's really beautiful, and first principles. And again, I'm using all these fancy words, but it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, we're just taking people and we're turning them into better human beings. And by becoming a better human being and a more educated human being, you become empowered. And all of a sudden, you're able to sense what's going on with you. So I want to wrap this up here. I want to talk a little bit about our future vision, like what this can look like and where we're going right now. And I also am going to read you some helpful words, a poem that I wrote called Health is a Way of Life. I believe that this is the future of healthcare, and this is my life passion. And maybe when I'm watching this video in 10 or 20 years from now, I hopefully am going to sit back and say, damn, I'm really proud that we put this out there. And I'm not the type that likes to just work on everything in secret. There is some time for that. And I think there is that. I like to tell people about what we're doing. And frankly, I don't care if someone wants to copy us. Please, go ahead. Take systems-based health coaching. You can't call it that, sorry, but you can take these principles and you can apply it to your patients right now if you want to. Here's the future. Here's what I see. Okay. Let's say that someone is diagnosed. Let's use inflammatory bowel disease because I know it the best. Let's say there's a college student. Okay. Let's say her name is Sarah, for example. Okay. Not just coming up, pseudonym. Okay. Sarah starts to have, she starts to lose weight unexpectedly. We don't know what she doesn't have a change in bowel movements or anything like that, but something is going wrong. And she starts to feel really fatigued. And then all of a sudden the GI symptoms come. She has this pressure in her lower right side of her abdominal cavity. And she starts to have diarrhea, and she starts to have blood and mucus and stool, and she's admitted to the hospital because it's getting serious. Okay. Now in the hospital, this is the future. This is the vision. This is what I'm talking about. When she's there, she's stabilized. Okay. And she's given, the drugs that she needs to be stabilized. She's given prednisone. She's given, fluids. They make sure she doesn't have an infection. She's given a CT scan or an MRI or an MRE. Maybe she's given a colonoscopy and they confirm the diagnosis of Crohn's disease, and she's stabilized. Now, in the current healthcare model, Sarah is just sent home. She's sent back to the stressful environment she's in. She's given no guidance. She's just here, take this medication. In the new system that I would propose, let's say a nurse comes up to her and she gives her a brochure for something like Systema Health. And the nurse says, Sarah, did you know that your insurance company will actually cover you to be in this incredible program? And by the way, we don't accept insurance right now. We're a far way from that. We have other ways of helping financially disadvantaged people, but this is the vision that I believe, and we need to essentially gain the millions of dollars that it will take to do the scientific evidence to show insurance companies that it's going to save them money in the long run too, for them to cover systems-based health coaching and this new idea of patient empowerment here. And let's say that she can even go for a couple days, maybe longer, to an incredible retreat center. She can get more in touch with nature. She can learn how to cook. She can learn the science behind her Crohn's disease. She can essentially connect with other IBD patients, human to human. Okay, this is not, healing is not going to happen in just the metaverse. Okay, it's going to happen on a human to human level. But when she's done at that retreat, maybe her whole family can go and insurance covers, 50% or more of it or something like that. She's able to come back and she's able to be with this community in a digital format where we're going to be able to use AI and machine learning and these different aspects to help her to decipher what's working for her, what's not, for her to complete her health master plan and her remission master plan, and to be able to then coordinate perfectly and seamlessly with her entire medical and health team. And that's the vision that we are going for every chronic health condition in the United States and in the world. And I think we are going to see a dramatic change. Obviously, we need legislative change. We need to ban these chemicals that are causing these chronic health conditions. Okay. But in the meantime, this needs to be coupled with patient empowerment and education. So listen, this is happening right now. We have incredible digital programs. You can work with me right now, one-on-one. It doesn't matter what chronic health condition that you have. We work in 4 domains of health, okay? Depending on what chronic health condition. We have the brain mindset domain. We have the immune inflammation domain. We have the gut microbiome domain, and we have the lifestyle metabolism domain. And different conditions fall into those. Okay. So for example, inflammatory bowel disease would be in the immune inflammation and gut microbiome domain. IBS would be in the gut microbiome domain, a little bit in the brain mindset domain. ADHD, something I'm also very passionate about. I think that's also being caused by the chemicals we're eating and our education system. That's in the brain mindset domain. Heart disease and fatty liver disease and these lifestyle metabolic conditions would be in the lifestyle metabolism domain. Rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis or eczema would be in the immune inflammation domain. So we've thought a lot about this. And I believe that this is perhaps the start of a serious disruption, but a gentle disruption in healthcare. We are, physicians, for example, GI doctors, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, different foundations for diseases. We are your partners, and you are our partners in this journey. And this is really the first movement where patients like myself, patient experts, are coming up and taking charge here. This is in many ways what I call patient-directed healthcare. If you're suffering, like I said, you can click the link below. You can contact me, and I would love to hear from you. I'll put my email. I'm going to put my email right now in the description. If I get too many spams or emails, I'm going to take it away. Okay, but I'll put it right down there. If you want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to if you want to be in our inflammatory bowel disease program, Systema IBD, if you want to learn systems-based health coaching, get in contact with me. I can't promise you that I'm going to be able to work with you, but we have a lot of options now. I don't care what country you are in. We've worked with people all around the world. We've worked with people in Europe and in Asia and in Central America, in the Middle East, in Canada, in Australia. This is an international movement that we are putting forward. So I want to thank you for listening to me for an hour on this. I really appreciate your time. If you want to collaborate on this project, I'd love to hear from you as well. We do get many, many applications to collaborate with us and to be on my team. So no guarantees there, but I would love to hear from you. So with that, I want to give you some hope. If you are struggling right now, if your symptoms are out of control, if you cannot live your life in the way that you want to, I want to give you some hope that things can get better, that you can get better on your own, that you can get better through working with me, that the brain is plastic, that the body is plastic, that you can change it significantly. So this poem, I'm going to end our podcast here, is called Health is a Way of Life. Your health is not a destination. It's a way of life. You will not simply arrive there. You will live and breathe your health every day. Staying healthy requires planning and awareness, strength and grit, a pronounced ability to adapt within new and challenging contexts and circumstances. Health is like surfing down the face of a wave. It's a state of flow with your natural surroundings where harmonious freedom meets refreshing control. No longer resisting or fighting nature's power, but instead harnessing her energy for your mutual symbiotic benefits. We got to get back to how our ancestors lived in many ways. We're not going to go back to prehistoric times, but they didn't have the same levels of chronic disease that we have. Here's the next verse. Achieving optimum health does not require magic. It instead demands remarkable persistence and a new state of mind. This change will allow you to engage reasonable strategies based on scientific discovery and evidence. You will begin to reconcile and observe the delicate interconnection of human biology to the environment you inhabit. You will acknowledge yourself as an individual with unique life circumstances, needs, and dreams, who will always require tailored interventions designed specifically for you and by you. You will learn that cultivating health gives you superpowers. As someone who has now embarked on this journey, you will gain extraordinary and rare abilities, allowing you to sense the makeup of your environment and to differentiate between what heals and harms you with a newfound precision. With your new realized superpowers, you will iterate continuously and make changes to your life that bestow robust states of healing and health into the very core of who you are. Embarking on the road to health takes time, and this process is non-linear. Remember, patience. You will encounter obstacles that you could not predict nor prevent. However, you must never give up or give in. I can promise you your health does not sleep, and healing will not spontaneously arrive on your doorstep. Indeed, you will intentionally harness the tools, the community, and the mindset to become a person who is stronger, happier, more adaptable than ever before. At this time, your health will cease to be a far-off, unattainable destination. It will become your way of life. And I want to end it there. Thank you so much for your time. I'd love to speak with you. I'd love to help. All the links will be in the description. And let's change healthcare forever. Let's change human health forever. This is my life mission, and I'm never going to give up. Love you all.